The views expressed on the Warren and Bradley Show are not necessarily those held by the hosts, Warren and Bradley, nor those of the proprietors of the website, warrenandbradley.com.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Let's make some magic.
It is magic time. Hello, and welcome once again to the Warren and Bradley Show. I am one of your hosts, Bradley Victor.
I'm the other host, Warren Van.
We made a mistake last week because we recorded the show on, I think, December 15th.
Okay, that could be.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And not realizing that by the time this show came out, it would be like a few days before Christmas. And then we're recording this show now, which is going to take place after Christmas. So we can't do Christmas things on this show because that would be ridiculous and kind of anachronistic.
No. Oh, remember we sang that song last year?
We did. And people were asking, are you going to do another Christmas song?
People love that song.
Oh, they did. It was amazing. It was one of our finest hours. But we're not, apparently, because last week we there was absolutely nothing about Christmas in last week's show, which was, I guess, ostensibly the Christmas show. So fuck it. This is like the New Year's show. I don't know what's going on. So this is ostensibly the New Year's show, but we probably won't do anything special.
We're going to go back and play a lot of the best clips from this past year. You gonna get on top of that, Brad?
Yeah, we should do a clip show. Give ourselves a break. We work so hard.
But wouldn't that just be more work for you? Having to go back and go get
clips?
clips?
It would, yeah. It would be way more work because I'd have to listen through like hours and hours and hours of us.
If we actually had like
on
producers or like editors that are working here, we could just like take the week off and we'd be like, throw together a clip show.
Well, we would have people who would log every single show and they would have everything transcribed, every single word that we had ever said, and they would have it logged by the timestamp, and they would be able to just go out and like grab these clips.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Instead of me just like
laboriously
listening
working
for hours and hours and hours, getting so sick of the sound of our voices. Speaking of the holidays, though, here, Warren.
What's in there?
Would you like a piece of fudge?
Yeah, I'd like a piece of fudge. Thank you.
I made this fudge myself. The first fudge I ever made. Let's taste the sound.
This is the first fudge you ever made? Mm-hmm. It's good.
Huh. That's some good fudge, isn't it? Would you like another piece?
I'm all right, thank you.
Come on, I'm
just brush my teeth.
So?
It tastes a little weird because
why'd you brush your teeth in the middle of the day?
Well, I was sitting around watching football, and this is the first time I was going to leave the house. So I got up and I like clipped my nails. I shaved, which I do once a week lately, and brushed my teeth.
You're really stepping up the hygiene there, aren't you, Warren?
Oh, it was 2:15 in the afternoon. I thought I'd get around to it.
Speaking of football, you mentioned last week that did the Victorian Dandies, your fantasy or fairy tale football league, not make it to the finals?
They came through. I'm in the final today.
So this is the final game.
This is the final game for cash money, for bragging rights. Right now, I'm ahead.
Yeah.
But mostly because my team, the players on my team played in the early games.
Right.
My opponent, Kyle's team, is mostly playing the afternoon games.
Okay. And your guys didn't put up the numbers?
My guys put up solid numbers.
Yeah.
Like good numbers. About what is predicted by Yahoo, who gives you predictions on what your players are going to do. If his players also play out as predicted by Yahoo, I will win the championship.
And when will you know?
I will know.
It's press time. We don't know yet.
This is where it gets really nerve-wracking. All his players play through this afternoon, and then there's a night game tonight, of course, when our beloved Seahawks play the 49ers in Sunday Night Football.
Yes.
The last player playing in the game is Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, of the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And so it could possibly be that he could decide the game, his performance. So I may be in that position where
you have to root against
the
Seahawks.
Yeah. Against their bitter rival, the 49ers. Hoping that the Victorian Dandies win. I hope it doesn't come down to that.
You must feel so torn when you're in a situation like that.
Oh, it's terrible.
No.
It's been a really rough morning, actually.
I'm glad that that's all that we have to worry about.
I know. It's quite a luxury, isn't it?
Why don't you go to, I don't know,
Guatemala.
Is Guatemala that bad?
Yeah, Guatemala's not good.
Most of Central America is not the greatest place in the world.
Yeah, Central America, you got some rough spots there.
I was thinking like Bangladesh.
Sub-Saharan Africa.
The
Bangladesh.
Congo. Go to the Congo.
Yeah. Whichever
complain
Congo.
about your fairy tale football league in the Congo, and they'll be like, and then they'll get really pissed off. And
what voice was that? What was that?
that was a
Congolese person?
Congian person.
Congian?
They'll point to their distended bellies and their children dying, and the monkeys with AIDS running around everywhere.
Think that's what would happen if I went there and I just showed up and started talking about fantasy football? There'd actually be a monkey around for them to point at with AIDS.
You'd be raped by chimps who have AIDS. And they'd be like, now you know what problems are. That sounded kind of East Indian. I don't know if that was Congo
that was just general, like, third world, maybe.
I was always curious about the whole spread of AIDS, because I remember when I was a little kid, people used to say that it was people having sex with monkeys in Africa.
Yes.
Because I think that was just like some weird latent racism that we had. Well, of course they have sex with monkeys in Africa. But apparently it was because they would eat monkeys or chimps that had AIDS, which I don't know if that's much better, because if you find a decaying chimp corpse, and
you just said, though, they have a tough life.
Yeah, but
they need food.
If I found an animal that looks like it had just died in the prime of its life, it just dropped dead, and it was all skinny and like didn't look too good, I wouldn't think, dinner.
Yeah, that's
because
probably
you might
true.
think that maybe there was a reason why the chimp died.
Well, I remember when we were kids, I remember it always being about like one guy and one monkey.
Yeah.
Like some guy and this monkey got it on.
The guy had sex with the monkey, and then he somehow knew he had AIDS, and then he went to New York purposely and had sex with a bunch of gay guys.
I know when I talk to people, some of my friends from the Midwest, it was a green monkey.
A green monkey?
They grew up with a green monkey, had sex with a man.
What's a green monkey?
Like, the monkey was actually green.
What the fuck is this? Some Irish monkey?
I don't know, it had AIDS, and so it made it green, and this guy, like, had sex with it, came back, and then spread AIDS everywhere. Apparently, none of these things were true.
No.
But there's, as children, we actually didn't know a lot less than basically the adults we were around, who are constantly afraid of like getting AIDS from toilet seats.
I was convinced I had AIDS as a small child.
I was very scared of AIDS as well.
Well, because you know this, but our listeners wouldn't know this. I had a very bad immune system as a child.
Yes.
I was constantly getting sick, like pneumonia and strep throat, just all the time. And so I would hear little snippets of news reports about AIDS and things like that, and they were like, oh, it's an immune deficiency. And I knew enough to know that your immune system is what prevented you from getting sick. And then I heard that it was mostly a gay disease. And I remember asking, I was in our station wagon once in the backseat of the car, and my mom was driving around, and I was like, what is gay? And she went, and she got all uptight, and I knew that this was a question I probably shouldn't have asked. And then she said, it's men who don't like women. They just like other men. And I went, I'm gay because I don't like women and I just like other men. I didn't realize there was a sexual component to this.
No.
So I was convinced. I remember, actually, I think we were on our way to Stanley Park Zoo. We were waiting in the border.
Oh, yes.
And I remember hearing some other news report about AIDS, and I was convinced that not only was I gay, for, my understanding of what gay meant, but that I obviously had AIDS.
Yeah.
And I was going to die.
Terrified, right?
It's strangely, I wasn't really that terrified.
You were resigned to your fate?
Yeah, I was kind of just like fatalistic about it. Like,
I do remember us as small children all like fantasizing about our future where we would all live together in a house. Us men, right?
Yeah.
And that would be, you know what I mean? No,
we
women.
didn't want any girls around.
We wouldn't get
Jesus
married.
Christ.
We'd just all marry each other and live in a house.
I don't know if we ever talked about marrying
we talked
each
about
other.
marriage. I remember this.
Really?
There was never any at our school when we were, of course, we were really retarded, like as far as learning about sexuality and things like that.
We had a lot
especially
of
when we were
ideas.
very young. We had no notion of what was going on, really. And we were just like, oh, yeah, well, rather than be married to these girls who we can't stand, who we chase around we'll just all live in a house, and we'll all just live together.
I do remember designing schematics for some of the houses we were going to live in. They always involved lots of torture chambers and strange booby traps and things like that.
There's probably, like, guns mounted on the outside, like a tank.
There's moats with spikes.
Yeah,
and
we'd
sharks,
be ready for anything. Yeah.
Sharks with guns strapped to them, like, weaving between the spikes and the moat.
Oh.
Little did we know.
Little did we know.
Horrible our future would actually be.
Although I actually do live with a bunch of men now, so even in my 30s. So
and you're all married.
I'm living the dream.
I think last week or the week before I was talking about I made the mistake of going to the grocery store the day before Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I made the mistake of going today.
I did, too.
Which is just a few days before Christmas. And I guess I'm just always unaware of anything going on, like the fact that there are holidays. I don't behave the way normal people behave, and so it doesn't occur to me that there's going to be this weird rush of lemmings at the grocery store just clogging everything
Desperately just clinging, just grabbing anything they can.
I went there to get some condensed milk and some unsweetened or semi-sweetened chocolate morsels because I was making some fudge. And so I was just like, I'll just drop by the store. It's like, oh Oh my God. I walk in there. And the thing that was occurring to me today, I've already bitched about the grocery store and everybody being in my way, so I'm not going to retread all that material. But I think the closest I ever come to having like a panic attack is when I'm in situations like that. I'm not agoraphobic normally, but when I'm in a situation, it is kind of an enclosed space. I'm in this grocery store. It's filled with people. There's something I want to accomplish, and there are all these living fleshy obstacles in my way of accomplishing my goal, and me just trying to walk through the store, and everyone is so fucking huge. It's like you're being trampled by water buffaloes, and I'm not just talking about weight. It's just like I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
I'm pretty tall, but Americans are just massive. We're huge, and they're just all standing in the way. I think that if I lived in Tokyo or something, and I was in the middle of Shibuya, and there were just like tens of thousands of people crammed around me, I don't think I would be as unsettled there as I was in the Fred Meyer grocery store, because they're smaller.
Well, they're smaller, and also it's a situation where you expect to be around a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the problem. It's a situation where you're like, usually you go to the grocery store, you want to buy your little can of condensed milk or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very easy, right? You just go in there, you put it on the...
It's 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes, you're in and out. But when you go into a situation like that, and it's completely out of control with people everywhere blocking everything up. And I know I get this feeling. I get really anxious because I'm like, I better rush so I can get to the line, because if I don't get to the line now, there's just going to be a longer line. I better get going.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because the line's always going to be the
line's always
same
going to be long
length
anyways, and it's going to be a nightmare anyways. But I think it dictates my life, a lot of what I do. Like, I don't... Avoiding people in these situations. Like, if there's a restaurant on a Friday night where there's going to be a lot of people there and everyone just goes there on that time.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. I'd rather go to the restaurant next door, maybe that's less popular, where you don't have to wait for an hour to get in. Well, you have to be crammed into a little waiting room waiting for something to happen. It's a horrible way to do things.
Well, and I think that really goes counter to the way most people are, because most people are into the weird group activity and the mob mentality. People want to do things when other people are doing things.
That's what creates the mob in the first place, right? Yeah.
And the only time I ever want to be in a crowded place is if I'm going out on the weekend. The point of me going out is to be surrounded by people. But when I'm just trying to do my daily activities, I don't...
Everything else in life,
many fucking people.
You don't want traffic.
No.
You don't want people in lines.
No.
You just want to be able to do what you're doing. Rather, with that, I just can't stand it either. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I actually went to get some conveyor belt sushi on Friday night, and as we were going over there, I was very anxious the entire time, because oftentimes you'll show up there, I'll be like, can I get on the list? And they'll be like, I guess. And then they got this list that's like very long.
Yeah.
Many names, and just people milling around everywhere, desperately like waiting to get in at these little seats. The people sitting at the seats, taking things off the conveyor belt, anxiously looking behind them as people are peering over them, like, trying to get into those chairs. Like, why aren't you hurrying? Why aren't you hurrying?
Yeah.
And this is what people want to do. And it always occurs to me, it's like, maybe that would be the time to like have dinner at home and then maybe go there when it's less busy.
I have this thing, speaking of people waiting for your space, I have this thing where often when I go downtown, I park on this particular road that has parking on either side of the street, this diagonal parking.
Yes.
And I hate it when I've parked my vehicle and there's always constantly these people circling the block waiting for someone to pull out of their parking spot. And so if I'm walking to my car and I see people approaching, I pretend not to be getting into my vehicle because I know that they're going to stop and they're going to wait for me to get out. And I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
I want to like sneak into my car. I don't put it in reverse so they can't tell that I'm about to back out. It's this weird thing. And it doesn't make any difference. Like, I'd still probably take as much time as I normally would. But just the idea that there's people like, ugh, there's always somebody around. There's always somebody around. It drives me insane.
Well, you mentioned it, in the past about being at the grocery store and people just blocking the way, right? Not being aware of what's going on. People on the road not like caring about who's behind them or anything.
Right.
I think we both have that consciousness of other people around us, right?
Yeah.
And we can feel if somebody's like waiting, even if it's like inappropriate, the level that they're waiting for us. We still feel like we're waiting, so we still feel that pressure.
Right.
And it just makes it much easier when you're doing things and there aren't lines, there aren't people constantly behind you, like harassing you, trying to get past you. It's just,
I had
terrible.
a snafu in addition to the crowds at the grocery store. See what you think of this. I was waiting for the self-checkout line.
Yeah.
Huge amount of people. And first of all, I was standing in line, and there was this guy behind me who was standing way too close to me.
Yeah.
Like, he was touching me. He was standing so close, and he was breathing on my neck.
What?
And I was like, I kept trying to edge away from him, and then he would edge closer, because it was like, oh, the line's moving now, so I'm going to edge as close as I can to this person.
Him getting closer to the front of the line
means that he's going to go
He's going to get
quicker.
there sooner, yeah.
And it finally got to the point where I got so uncomfortable, I turned around and said, "Do you mind stepping away a little bit?" And he went, "Whoa!" and just freaked out. Like it was the rudest thing anyone had ever said to him. He's like, "Oh, it's a little crowded in here. Come on. What am I going to do?" And I was like, just give me a little space. You're breathing on my neck. It's ridiculous. It turned this huge thing, and the employee like gave me this dirty look like I had caused some problem.
Yeah.
The employee that's like managing the self-checkout line.
Oh, the self-checkout line that never needs any help from anyone, except for there's constantly staff working there.
I needed help today because the next part is I went to the self-checkout thing. I brought my own bag, as I usually do.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get too detailed with this, but basically when you go up there, if you're going to use your own bag, you have to press a little button saying you're going to use your own bag.
Yeah.
Then you have to put your bag on the little weighted area so it'll know that there's that extra weight.
So there's a tear, yeah.
So it tears that out, so then when you start putting your groceries on, it doesn't go like, error.
Yeah.
So I put my bag folded up because I can't put the bag open because it just falls
Yes.
down.
Okay.
So I put it folded up, and I started checking my items out, intending to put them all in the bag after I was done.
Yeah.
And so I did it. I checked all my items. I put them on the little scale. Everything was fine. And then at the end, it's like, how many bags do you want to purchase? Because they have the paper bags that you can spend 5 cents on. I said 0. And then I started trying to pay, and then it was like, error. And it's like, need assistance.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting around. Of course, the woman is busy with all these other people who don't know how to work the machine, or like trying to shove credit cards into the money slot and everything. Finally, she comes to me. I was like, yeah, I don't know what the deal is. It just said I need assistance. Could you just clear it out and I'll pay?
Yeah.
She's like, well, look what you did. What did I do? You didn't use your bag. What do you mean I didn't use my bag? It's like, you said you marked that you were going to use your own bag, but then you didn't use it. What difference does that make? The whole point of me marking that I'm going to use my bag means that it takes the weight of the bag. That's the only reason. How does it know that I didn't put the groceries in the bag?
Yeah.
That's what she was saying. The fact that I didn't put my groceries in the bag that's on the scale anyway somehow means that it got fucked up.
There's no way that could have affected it.
And so I was like, okay, whatever. And she's like, well, look what you did. It's like she wanted to shame me somehow and show me that I had somehow fucked up.
But the bag and the groceries are on the scale.
Yes.
The bag that you're going to use for the groceries.
It's just the weight.
Yeah.
It has nothing. It doesn't know if I put my groceries in the bag. It's not a sentient machine. It's like, you lied to me.
Or maybe unless they added some sort of like camera system that makes it so you can't deceive it and then take a bag afterwards.
I don't know. It just made no sense. And so she was like, well, you can't mark that you're going to use your own bag and then not use it. It's like, well, I'm intending to use it. I'm going to put my groceries in it once I'm checked out. She's like, well, you didn't put your groceries in it and you said you were going to do that. It's like, what are you even doing? What difference does it make to begin with? First of all, there's all these people waiting. Just clear it out so I can leave. I don't need this weird lecture from you. Second, you're wrong because there's no way that it would know that I didn't put my groceries in the bag. And she just wouldn't stop. She was like, she had to make sure that I knew that I had fucked up somehow, even though I hadn't done anything to fuck anything up. It was ridiculous.
Did you eventually just have to take them and put them in your bag?
No, I was sitting there. I'm like, okay, can you just clear it out for me? She's like, well, you need to understand. And she was angry at me or something. If you say that you're going to use your own bag, you have to use your own bag.
Like, the bag's right there.
It's there. It's on the scale. What difference does it make? And it was forever until finally she was just like, okay, well, next time. I'm like, oh, yeah, next time I'll remember, okay? Just let me go, please. Just, I don't understand people. It's like, what lesson was she trying to impart to me? Why did she feel it necessary to shame me in some way?
It seemed to be indicate to me that she doesn't completely understand how the machine works.
It's just some magic device to her, and it somehow knows the intention of everybody who's using it. And like
the machine somehow knew that you hadn't put your stuff in the bag.
Yeah.
So the machine was like being angry at you.
And I was trying to explain to her, I was like, when you say use my own bag, the point of that is so the weight of my bag is taken into account. She's like, but you didn't use your own bag. But it's on the scale. You don't understand.
Huh.
It was exhausting.
Celebrity Minute on the Warren and Bradley Show. This week on Celebrity Minute with the Warren and Bradley Show, we'll start right off with our top story.
Mila Kunis, targeted with anti-Semitic slur by Ukrainian politician. Ukrainian politician Igor Miroshnichenko has reportedly taken aim at one of his country's most famous glamorous immigrants, Mila Kunis. I'm really proud that I just pronounced that name.
Yeah, I know. You practiced for a while.
I practiced a couple times.
Yeah.
In a recent Facebook post, the lawmaker argued that the Jewish Ukrainian-born TED actress 29 is not a true Ukrainian, calling her a zhydovka, which translates to dirty Jewess, a term used since the time of the Holocaust.
That's nice.
Ukrainian Jews subsequently protested the offensive slur, but the government then excused Miroshnichenko's wording, claiming the term isn't necessarily derogatory. It just means dirty Jewess, but not necessarily derogatory.
Maybe, yeah.
The Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles wrote a strongly worded letter to the nation's prime minister, imploring him to speak out against the heinous anti-Semitic slur directed at Ukrainian-born actress Mila Kunis. What I like about this story is, why is a Ukrainian politician commenting on Mila Kunis?
Yeah, how did he get in that situation where he's talking about Mila Kunis?
It's like, I always wonder about this when some celebrity or somebody or a politician will come out with some outrageous statement about something that has nothing to do with their field. And are reporters just asking millions of random questions? Like, he's at some news conference in the Ukraine, and someone's like, "What do you think of Mila Kunis?" And he goes, "She's a dirty Jewess." And then everyone goes, "Oh," and writes it down. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, it's weird how we get dragged into that. I feel like the American politicians would be a little bit more aware of things like that, right?
Well, I think in most parts of the world, they're not as politically correct as us.
Oh, and I've never been to the Ukraine or Russia or Belarus. But my understanding is there's a long history of pogroms against Jewish people and a lot of anti-Semitism, which I think is part of, maybe a lot more part of the culture than it is here.
I am still shocked by how much anti-Semitism there is, even in Western Europe. It's kind of strange. I don't think I've personally met anyone who hates Jews.
No.
And I don't know how I would react to that. It's kind of like if someone throws the N-word out or something and they're not being hilarious. They actually mean it.
I have been around people using Jew in a pejorative way, though.
Really?
Yeah, that has...
using it like, oh, he Jewed you out of something.
Yes, I have heard somebody use that in the last couple months. And I was like, oh. And they were like, oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, okay, is that...
I think that's less about, like,
anti-Semitism. Yeah, is that indicative of the way you feel, or are you just using an antiquated term
like using
that you're not supposed to use?
And you're not...
Gyp's fine.
People don't even know the origins of that, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, people just throw that out because they hear that, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't see a lot of, like, virulent anti-Semitism as I'm walking around during the day.
Which is a good thing. I think that's nice.
Which is true. What people, in our culture, all European soccer, this stuff comes out all the time. Monkey chants at black people. Neo-Nazi, like...
What is it with soccer that just...
well, I don't know if
it inspires such crazy emotions.
I don't know if it's about soccer, but it's a thing where it's like we get a lot of judgment on us coming from Western Europeans about our supposedly lowbrow culture.
Our race relations are so far in advance of most of the rest of the world. I mean, we've lived with immigrants forever, and we get along pretty fucking well. There's still problems.
You can't imagine going to a Seattle Mariners game and having a lot of, like...
fans yelling.
Racism coming out of the stands with groups chanting racist chants.
No.
It would shut down the internet. Everything would explode because it would be such a huge deal.
Yeah.
Whereas this is happening all the time in Italy. It's happening all the time in England. And yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah. They're not quite as evolved as they think they are.
I think so.
All right, next story. Sam Donaldson arrested for DUI in Delaware.
Oh, there's a picture of him. He's still a weird-looking man.
He's looking a little old there.
Looks like the Joker. He's always looked weird. Like he has some sort of mask stretched over his face.
Is that a comb-over or is that a toupee?
That's a good question.
Or is it a comb-over toupee?
Maybe it is just a comb-over toupee.
You just put it on one side of your head, and you would think you would just put the toupee on the entire head.
Yeah, he looks the same way he's always looked, except for, like, grayer,
Yeah. So I do like that if somebody has a toupee where they gray it with the rest of their hair. Because there's nothing worse than like a jet black toupee sitting on top of this like wiry gray
That's
hair.
awkward.
The 78-year-old ABC newsman was spotted driving on the shoulder of Savannah Road in Lewes, Delaware, December 1st. Police Chief Jeff Horvath told radio station Delaware 105.9. An officer detected alcohol on Donaldson's breath when he pulled up the newsman's vehicle and so proceeded to give him a field sobriety test, which Donaldson failed. I just like the idea... I mean, we always have all these stories of celebrities being drunk and driving around. But Sam Donaldson, for some reason, just imagining him out on the side of the road trying to walk in a straight line, like, I'm Sam Donaldson, like walking back and forth. I don't know. There's just something comedic about
that. That
this.
is very funny. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's pretty much retired, but he still contributes to a lot of news programs, so I don't know if this will affect that in any way, but...
Okay, this is just something I want to mention about this. In our country, I know, I've always seen, there's a lot of bars that are located far away from any form of public transit or anywhere you can walk anywhere.
You have to drive.
You have to drive there. Most bars are that way, I would say. People are just drunk driving everywhere all the time, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I refuse to go to a bar that I have to drive to, and I live close to downtown, and there's a nice corridor.
We don't have to do that, right?
We don't have to. We can walk downtown. There's plenty of bars to choose from. But I know of plenty of people who live out in the county who drive downtown, go to a bunch of bars, and then
drive home.
They either pass out in their car,
or
they drive home every single time. And it's amazing to me because... For as many people who do drive drunk, there are very few accidents in relation to that. I mean, obviously, it's very dangerous because I'm the kind of person who the one time I drive drunk, I will be pulled over and arrested. But all these other people, they do it constantly and they never get caught. And it's kind of irritating. It's like the one time I jaywalk, I will get a jaywalking ticket. I have no luck in terms of breaking laws. So, yeah, it is strange. I knew, and it seems like older people get away with it a lot more because they drink earlier in the day. So they'll go after work.
Going on at 2 a.m.
Yeah, the cops hang around the downtown area because they know that college kids the bars are closing and they're waiting for people to be driving home. If you go after work, you've been running an excavator all day, and then you go to some hick bar at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, get totally wasted, and you're getting your pickup. Yeah, you get your pickup.
And you drive home drunk.
And you're like a 50-year-old dude.
And it's like 8 o'clock in the evening, right?
Yeah, they're not out looking for you.
Yeah.
And even if you do kind of swerve around, they're not automatically, they're not pouncing on you immediately, hoping
at 2
to get the
a.m.
ticket.
You're thinking drunk driver.
Right.
At 8 p.m. you're thinking poor driver.
And it's more about revenue than public safety because they know that the bill is going to be huge if you get pulled over for drunk driving, and they're trying to make some money.
You think that's what drunk driving enforcement's about?
I do, yeah. We have an update on the Justin Bieber assassination attempt story. We were making a little light of it last week because it just sounded so ridiculous, and I still don't really feel like there was that much danger that this was actually going to take place. But I was reading another story about it recently, and there was a major point that we forgot to mention. We have a little more information. Apparently, the mastermind of the evil genius, Dana Martin, who was responsible for this plot, the whole reason he decided to kill Bieber was that he had attempted to correspond with him, and Bieber never wrote him back.
Oh, yeah.
He was so angry about this perceived slight that, and also because he thought of himself as being a nobody in prison, he decided to kidnap and murder Bieber and also castrate him.
Yeah.
The two hired guns were given a pair of hedge clippers, and they were supposed to remove Bieber's testicles and, I guess, visit the guy in jail with the testicles to show them that they had accomplished the goal, and they would be paid for each testicle.
That's nice.
And apparently given a safe house in Florida where they can hang out.
First of all, I still insist that this is these people are idiots.
Well, yeah, obviously.
So they took the wrong turn into Canada.
Well, the way they were caught, they made a wrong turn, got stuck in the line to go into Canada at the border. The older guy, Mark Stock, he had outstanding warrants, and so when they were going through the border, they checked and saw, okay, you have outstanding warrants, we're going to arrest you now. They let Tanner Round go. But then when the older gentleman was making his phone call, he called the younger guy and told him, started talking about the crime that they were going to commit. And, of course, they were listening in, and then they went and picked up the other guy. They were idiots. But the idea of, first of all, maybe Dana Martin doesn't realize that Bieber has no testicles.
Oh, jeez.
So right. I don't know if it would have been successful anyway. Even if they had managed to kidnap and murder him.
Maybe that's why he's a mastermind.
And there's just this little nub there.
He doesn't have to
like
pay.
A Ken doll.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Maybe he did now.
He's a genius.
Actually, that's a good point, Warren.
Yeah, this was never going to happen.
No.
I mean, if they didn't take a wrong turn at some point, they would be stopped at some point, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, they weren't brilliant people.
What was it? Were they just going to wait outside the concert and
then grab him
with some
and
hedge
then try
clippers?
to bring him into an alley and try to cut off his balls with the hedge clippers? That wasn't going to work.
I think he has lots of security.
Yeah.
This is an obnoxious story. Madonna threatens to cancel concert over smoking fans. This is from Us Weekly. During a sound check for her show at an open-air theater in Santiago on Wednesday, December 19th, the 54-year-old pop icon noticed some fans lighting up in her vicinity. Annoyed, she interrupted her own performance of Human Nature to call out the offending audience members. There are people smoking right now, the singer said angrily. If you're going to smoke cigarettes, I'm not doing a show. You don't care about me. I don't care about you, all right? The fans continued to smoke, and she said, Are we going to play that game? I'm not kidding. I can't sing if you smoke. Entiendes? Threw a little Spanish lingo in there. Responding to a "we love you" from someone in the crowd, Madonna shot back, "If you love me, then don't smoke. No smoking! You're looking right at me while you're smoking cigarettes like I'm a stupid fucking idiot."
Oh, jeez.
And then she...
Wow. She's
the
out of her
superstar
mind.
who actually smokes a cigarette for effect in her Girl Gone Wild video released earlier this year, then turned and stormed off stage, leaving the half-packed venue waiting in the rain. She did eventually come and continue the show. Madonna, fuck you. Shut the fuck up, you smug, stupid bitch. This anti-smoking bullshit, it's like the most self-righteous, smug, stupid shit I've ever heard in my entire life. She's on stage. I'm sure these weren't stage hands. They weren't within feet of her. They were probably dozens of yards away smoking a cigarette. Just shut the fuck up. That is so obnoxious to me. This whole secondhand smoke thing is the biggest load of bullshit that has ever been perpetrated upon a society ever. You know, how many people smoked in the 60s? Were people just dropping dead left and right all over the place?
Many of those people ended up with lung cancer.
They didn't at anywhere near the rates that people claim. The idea that, I mean...
Are you working for Philip Morris now? What's going on?
It's just, I hate this hysteria that everything is the biggest crisis in the entire world. I'm sure that if you are married to someone for 50 years and they're hotboxing you in a 5x5 room, that's probably not good for you. Yeah. But you just smelling the scent of a cigarette as you're walking by in the street is not going to do anything to you.
You'll be fine with that.
Fucking, God, I hate Madonna. I wonder if she still has that fake English accent that she started developing.
I thought she got rid of that because it was turning into an embarrassment.
Well, I don't think she really gives a shit about being embarrassed.
Apparently not.
I think she lives in such a weird fantasy world that she has no idea that she's an idiot.
Ooh. Who's this guy?
Rapper Nas sued for $10 million by kidnapped concert promoter.
What?
This is just a very odd story. Rapper Nas was supposed to perform a concert in Africa. He accepted $300,000 to do a New Year's Eve concert in Africa and then never got on the plane. And as a result, the promoter who had organized the show said that he and his son were held captive by another promoter in Africa for 50 days, during which time they were reportedly beaten and threatened constantly.
Okay, because he didn't show up. The promoters, like... Wow, that's weird.
It's like it was some place in Angola, I guess. First of all, don't put on concerts in Angola. There's a lot of like blood diamonds and scary things going on there. And people are going to take a machete and hack off your arms or something if you don't show up. I just like the idea that these kinds of things still go on. Like Nas is a big name in hip hop and rap music. And the idea, I miss the old, like, Frank Sinatra days of mob guys putting a gun to people's heads and, like, you got to let him out of this contract or else either your brain or your signature is going to be on the contract kind of thing.
Godfather style, yeah.
I like the idea that this stuff goes on. Of course, it's in Angola. I don't know if it goes on here anymore, but...
Well, even, I mean, he had a somewhat bitter rivalry with Jay-Z that went on for years.
Oh, yes.
Jay-Z eventually kind of won, I guess, because he has the most money. So, in your face.
Nas. Nas says that the business wasn't handled. There was nothing sent to me and there were no flights. That sounds really weird. By the time he did send money, he did eventually send money to me. It was too late to go. I didn't even have a visa to get into the country. That just sounds like laziness and ineptitude by Nas.
Well, no, it's just a poorly organized event, right?
Apparently.
Some guy was just trying to throw together something in Angola and he didn't have enough money, and so he sent the money late.
Wanted to tap into the unexploited hip-hop fandom in Angola.
Yeah, how much money can you make putting on concerts in Angola? I don't know if any of our listeners are in Angola. There's probably many of you.
This might show our prejudice and ignorance, but I don't imagine that a lot of people in Angola have a lot of disposable income to spend on rap concerts.
Of the many countries that I think of as of people not having enough money to go to rap concerts, Angola would rank up there as among the top.
We were just talking about the monkeys with AIDS raping people, so I think they have to fend those off first before they can go to a rap show. All right. That's enough for Celebrity Minute on this week's Warren and Bradley Show.
This has been Celebrity Minute on the Warren and Bradley Show. They onto the streets, scavenging for loose change and discarded cigarette butts.
Bear $1.
And give me a motherfucking cigarette.
I ran out of gas ways back.
You smoke weed, don't you?
Good in the car.
I could use some change. They may be mentally unstable and deserving of our charity, but that doesn't mean they can't be selected as the Warren and Bradley Show Street Freak of the Week. For this week's Street Freak of the Week, we have a very religious street freak who I encountered on the corner, my smoke and drink and coffee corner. And you know, because you live in Bellingham, but some people might not know that a lot of our pedestrian areas downtown are protected by these little R2-D2 shaped bollards.
Yes.
They're these little concrete things shaped like R2-D2. They even have the little cap that R2-D2
They
has.
look a lot like R2-D2.
They look very much like R2-D2. And I guess they're to prevent crazy people from jumping the curb in their vehicles and running over pedestrians.
Taking out all the crazy people on the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I use them. I put my coffee cup down on R2-D2's head. And that's
just put it at the very top so it doesn't tilt over? Okay.
So as I'm standing there watching people walk by, I take a sip of coffee, and then I put it down on R2-D2, and then I look around, and this homeless guy shuffled up to me. He looked kind of like a squat, fat Gallagher, the comedian, if anyone remembers Gallagher.
Okay.
He had the like weird curly bald hair sticking out on either side. And I don't know, just in a weird mustache. He just was very odd looking.
You know, Gallagher's featured in a recent Geico commercial. Have you seen that?
I did not know that.
Where some people are at a farmer's market, and then Gallagher runs up and starts crushing watermelons, and it gets all over them. It's a good commercial.
It's good to be famous or something. He walked up, and he had a coffee cup in his hand, and as he was approaching me, he was going... It's that popular street freak laugh that we hear very often. He was very pleased with himself about something, and he gave me a sidelong glance, sort of nodded at me. And then I didn't realize it, but I think he was acknowledging the fact that I had a coffee cup.
Oh, yeah.
Because he had a coffee cup, too. And he was chuckling over this coffee cup. He was very pleased.
Yeah.
He went down to another R2-D2, and he put it down on top of the R2-D2.
Oh.
And looked at me, and my coffee was on the other my R2-D2, and he gave me another nod.
He's not. This isn't a mime like trying to like impersonate you. Or anything.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think he was trained in Paris or anything like that. So he put the coffee cup down, and then he very ponderously bowed to the coffee.
Oh yeah.
And started praying to the coffee.
Yeah.
He crossed himself first, like our Catholic friends are wont to do.
Yeah.
And then started praying to the coffee and saying, "Bless me for the coffee I'm about to drink. I appreciate the fact that I get to drink you." And just going on, like mumbling under his breath to the coffee. He wasn't praying to God to thank God for the coffee.
He was praying to the coffee for the coffee.
He was praying to the coffee. Then he gave me a look again, picked up the coffee, and sort of saluted me with his coffee cup. And I went, "Oh, yeah," and saluted him with mine. And we both shared a sip together, not off the same coffee cup, but we both sipped at the same time.
You didn't entwine arms and both drink?
No,
okay.
No. And then after he had taken a sip of his coffee, he put the coffee back down and stretched his arms out like Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
And then slowly began rotating with his arms outstretched. And as people were walking by, he went, "I look like Jesus on the cross." He would rotate a few times, take a sip of his coffee off the R2-D2, put it back down, and then rotate some more while his arms were outstretched.
Yeah.
And he kept looking at me, waiting to see if I were paying attention to what he was doing.
Yeah.
It was though I was supposed to make a comment about it or make some sort of friendly interlude to start talking to him. So finally, after he had rotated a few times, taken a few sips of coffee, he came over to me and asked me where a stamp store was. I'm assuming...
Not like Stamp-a-Doodle.
No,
but
I'm
probably
assuming
a place where
like...
you get like postage stamps.
I think he meant like collecting stamps.
Oh.
Like a stamp and coin.
There is one of those very close to where you were.
Well, there is one downtown. And so I said, well, there is a stamp and coin store downtown. And he said, "I want to sell this." And he took out a postcard that had... It was like in Spanish... And it had a picture of, like, a Mayan ruin on it.
Yeah.
But it was all crumpled up. It was not a stamp. There was no stamp on the postcard. It was just a
crumpled up postcard.
Yeah. And he said, "How much can I get for this?" I don't know. I think if you bring that there, they're going to say that you won't get anything for it.
Yeah.
And he seemed very confused.
Yeah.
He put it back in his pocket, took his wallet out. He had a big, fat wallet, just filled with shit. Not money, but just like weird stuff.
Yeah.
He pulled out a receipt that had been folded very tightly and intricately, and he showed that to me. And he went, "Hmm?" And I went, "Okay."
there's a receipt there. And he went, what about this?
He's going to try to sell this receipt.
And I said, again, I don't think you'll get any money for that. So then he pulled a baseball card out.
Oh, there we go. Baseball cards can be worth money sometimes.
Not this one. It's completely dog-eared, bent. It was a Wade Boggs from like...
Oh, it wasn't a Hannes Wagner from 1912 or anything?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't like a tobacco card or something. It was a Wade Boggs from like 1989 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, what about this? Well, I don't know if the stamp store sells or buys baseball cards.
And in that condition, you know.
But yeah, I don't know of any baseball card shops near here, but you could maybe look in a phone book or something. And he went, okay. Then he went and took his coffee, opened it up, and poured it on top of the R2-D2.
Yeah.
Then set the coffee cup on top of the R2-D2, and then bowed to it again.
Yeah.
And then walked away.
Wow.
This doesn't have... Usually the Street Freak stories have... There's
a crescendo or something.
There's a narrative. There's like... One thing leads to another, and then something happens. This was just one weird action after the next, none of them really connecting and none of them making any sense. Usually within their psychoses, there's some sort of sense that can be made of it.
Yeah.
You can maybe understand...
Well, there's something going on in their mind, right? And they're like, oh,
right.
I'm doing this for a reason.
And even if it doesn't make sense to us normals, you can sort of see why they may behave in the way they behave.
Okay, I'm going to throw out a theory here. I think this may have been Gallagher preparing for a role as a homeless person.
Well, you know that he had retired recently.
Oh, I think we had that on the show.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Maybe he just went into acting.
Yeah.
And they're like, Gallagher, we need you to play a fat homeless person, but I need you to really get into the role. So he's doing a series of crazy things in front of you.
Yeah.
Trying to make you think he's crazy.
It almost was like a parody of what a crazy person would do.
Yeah.
You know? But, I don't know, it left me feeling kind of empty because I knew that it was going to be the Street Freak because I hadn't had any other Street Freak encounters. Yeah. But I didn't feel like I had learned anything. I'm glad your interactions with the homeless have left you feeling a little sad this time rather than just uplifted. Well, no, I mean, I pity. There's a little pity involved often. Mostly scorn, I think. That's not scorn. Come on, Warren. Mostly you're incredulous that they act crazy. That's true. Yeah. You're like, how could you do this? But you know the whole reason we do Street Freak of the Week is to point the spotlight at the problem of homelessness. It's public service. It is. Yeah. We never give out any information about how to help the homeless people, but we just want, it's like breast cancer awareness. We want you to be aware that there are homeless people. If you come down to Bumtown, there are a lot of Bumtown services. Yeah. And you can help out. Yeah. Just a block away from me, you can go sleep at the Lighthouse Mission. There's free meals at the drop-in center right across the street. Oh, you're actually telling homeless people where they can go? Like homeless people are listening to the show? Because I haven't seen very many lately. I have a hard time believing they're listening. Remember there's the one that they share an iPod, right? They share their iPod. They all have that they share around the campfire when they have that burning barrel and they're cooking their beans. Yeah. Yeah. That's what Steve Jobs envisioned. I think so. Yeah. All right. So congratulations, Mr. Nonsensical, uber-religious, coffee cup worshipping, crucified homeless guy? Attempting to sell things homeless guy? Yeah. You've been selected as this week's Street Freak of the Week. Congratulations. Our hats are off to you, Mr. Homeless Man, because you've been selected as the Warren and Bradley Show Street Freak of the Week. Warren Van. Yes. Have you ever wondered if we're living in a giant computer simulation? A giant computer simulation? You know, like everyone else, you wonder about those things. Well, you're not the only one who's heard this word. There have been scientists at the University of Bonn, that's in Germany. Yeah. And also scientists at the University of Washington and other various professors in the academic sphere who are seriously trying to devise a way to test if we're living in a giant simulated reality. I don't know how you go about doing that. Well, I was reading these articles. This is the kind of story that pops up because people are like, ooh, scientists try to see if we're living in the Matrix. And everyone goes, oh, because they imagine. And then it gets on like news aggregators and it gets on like MSNBC. And people are like, ooh, I'll click on that because it says the Matrix in science. Right. But then you scratch a little deeper into the story. And basically, without getting bogged down by the details, scientists are saying that if we are living in a giant simulation, that there are certain rules to the simulation that should, on a macro macro level in this huge simulation should also have effect on a micro level. So if they take something like solar rays and look at solar ray particles and the way they interact with elementary particles like quarks, there's a certain grid system that apparently they move upon, and if they can make their own little tiny simulation using these solar ray particles, if the particles run in a grid system, then that would mean that we're not living in a simulation. But if they go diagonally, then it could be that we are.
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't really make any sense to us. It might be because we have no idea what we're talking about.
No, I doubt it's that reason.
But it also just seems like a leap of logic.
There are so many things that we don't understand about our world.
Yes.
But eventually we learn more and more and more. You know, Newton figured things out. Einstein figured things out. Heisenberg figured more things out.
Yes.
It's like, just because you discover something new that you don't understand right off the bat doesn't mean you're living in a matrix with Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne. That doesn't have anything to do with it.
Well, Martin Savage, who is a professor of physics at the University of Washington, is the one who is involved in trying to do these tests. There is another physicist, Jim Kakalios. Kakalios? Yeah.
You always end up with names like that.
I know, it's annoying. Jim Kakalios, a physics professor at the University of Minnesota. He's not involved in the paper that Savage has published, but he said that a test such as the one that Savage wants to do wouldn't necessarily prove anything. He says that if they don't find these signatures that they're looking for with these cosmic rays, it doesn't mean that we're not in a simulation. He says that it could be that our descendants, our future selves who have created this crazy computer simulation, have used a different grid.
Yeah.
Or if they do find something, it could also mean that that's just the way space-time is.
Yeah, that seems like the most rational explanation, right?
It seems pretty rational to me.
I'm no physicist.
No.
I read some Stephen Hawking
you have an
books.
honorary doctorate.
From Oxford in physics. But I know you have, like, quantum mechanics, right? Quantum physics. And you have, like, Newtonian physics.
Yes.
For bigger objects.
Everyone knows that.
Okay. The way those two things operate, they don't operate in the same way.
No.
That's why there's a quest for, like, a unified field theory, right?
Right.
To explain how things work at very small, when they're very small and when they're very large.
Right.
We don't understand that right now. That does not mean we're living in the Matrix.
I'm sure all our listeners are very bored. We know this already. How many times have we talked about this?
Well, everyone does know this.
Well, I don't know
but
if
that
everyone
doesn't mean...
does. But yeah, Kaklios, at the end of this article that I was reading, said that even though these experiments, in his opinion, would not prove or disprove the simulation theory, he still thinks that they're useful because it would help us find out more about the way space-time works and things, and I'm all for that.
That's a fine reason to do scientific experiments. You don't have to, like, tack on the Matrix,
Well,
right?
we're talking about it. And
I mean, that's why they do this, right?
We wouldn't be talking about it if it were just a theory.
So you think these eggheads were sitting around a room, they're like, oh, we got to work on this grid situation.
Yeah.
They're like, we can't get any funding.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. No publicity because it's not that, like, you know, glitzy
Let's get
or
the
glamorous.
Wachowski brothers and Keanu Reeves in here.
So they're like, well, let's throw this, like, Matrix thing out about this movie from the 90s.
Right.
Next thing you know, the money's rolling in. People are fascinated.
I love the idea that they actually do think that we're living in a matrix because, I mean, these are some of the most educated people in the world, probably some of the brightest people in the world, and I would love to think that they're actually seriously wondering. But you also have to think if they are physicists, that they're probably nerdlingers.
Yes.
And so they probably watch The Matrix a lot.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. But what my question would be, let's say in the future our human descendants developed the technology, the computer technology, the computing power to simulate, I mean, think of how much they would have to simulate. Just the idea of human consciousness. If we are just simulated in a computer, we're self-aware, we're aware of our bodies, even though we may not even have bodies. This may just be code in a computer. The idea of human consciousness is such a complex thing. If they were able to devote the insane resources and computing power necessary to create this insanely gigantic simulation, what would be the purpose to the simulation?
I can't imagine one.
Put yourself in their shoes. It's the year 8497, and you're one of the scientists involved in this giant simulation.
Yeah.
What are you looking for here?
They're like, we want to create the world's greatest podcast, and our universe can't do it.
You press the Bradley button. You're like, okay, let's check in on Bradley Victor here.
And see what they're doing.
92487-6. Is it just to find out about human nature but you can just look at humans.
But the other thing is about the simulation, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, so these people in the future, or aliens or whoever, have created the simulation of what's going on in our world. How do you know they're not just simulating what's going on with your consciousness and nothing else is going on with anyone else's consciousness? Why do I know that you have self-awareness and I don't? You know what I mean? If you're getting to the level where the world's simulated, why are you assuming that other people have consciousness as opposed to you do?
Whoa.
Why do you have any assumptions at all?
You just blew my mind, man.
It's a mind-blowing thing, but it's also like stupid to jump to that
conclusion. Probably should have smoked some pot before we started talking about this.
Why can't you just decide that, like, oh, maybe it must have been aliens that did it?
Well, that's a nice.
Oh, it's aliens.
That's an easy cop-out answer.
I'm looking at something that's going on with, like, these subatomic particles, and if they don't operate in the same way I want them to operate, it's because there was an alien war 1,000 years ago or something. It has nothing to do. One thing has nothing to do with the other thing. No.
I don't know. If, assuming that it's humans who have created this simulation of the world, what is their world? If this is a simulated world, are we just in some giant supercomputer? They're
walking around with they have very frail bodies. They're very tall. They all wear the same sort of like white cloak. The backs of their head are very gigantic.
Shiny metallic silver jumpsuits.
Yes, they have giant
and they have
backs
the big pulsing brains, and their hair is all falling out.
They no longer
their brain
talk
power.
Because they just communicate through telepathy. Yeah, they look at each other.
And the sides of their head pulsate.
No emotions. Yeah, right. They've just mastered everything.
That's what's happened. They've forgotten what it means to be human. They become so logical, they've completely divorced themselves from human feeling, and so they said, we must recreate the human condition in computer form. And they started at the very beginning. And they had this self-perpetuating simulation that could run from the time that man... Actually, they went to the very dawn of the Earth, because by that point, they understand the Big Bang. They understand how the universe was created.
Are they just rerunning...
They're rerunning everything.
So oh, no, that's what they are.
Yeah.
They're future historians who are rerunning everything that's happened so they can actually just go back and watch.
Because they want to know where they went wrong.
Or maybe they just want to know what happened.
Well, they want to shed a tear.
It's the only way they can know what happened, right?
Maybe.
We talked about
going back in time. This is a method of time travel.
It's a way of going back in time and checking everything out. And maybe they've been running lots of simulations, and they're just sitting there, and things are going along pretty fast, and they're like, that looks about right? What's going on 5,000 years ago, yada, yada, yada. And they get right up to where they are at that point, and they're like, was that one right? Are these people all sitting around the room like we're sitting around this room right now?
Yeah.
And if things are slightly off, they're like, God damn it, and they just run it again. It's a good theory, I think. Why not?
I love the idea that they're all sitting around their silver suits, and they have their mind projectors, and they can, I don't know, they use their space dollars or whatever currency they've developed at that point, and they're like, okay, it's like pay-per-view. Who do you want to subscribe to? And there's billions of people on the Earth, so they can watch snippets from that. Like, there might be a giant pulsating brain, silver-suited, emotionless future human watching your daily activities, because he decided that you're the one who is interesting.
So you think there's some sort of, like, Rupert Murdoch or Ted Turner in a silver suit who's, like, trying to profit off this in some sort of like cable structure?
Well, they would have to pay for their research, because I don't know, we talk about utopian societies in the future, the Space Federation and the Star Trek movies. They don't use currency anymore. They've gone past the idea of money and capitalism. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And if this is a giant computer simulation, they're going to have to fund it somehow. And so they're selling subscriptions. Like, you can watch Warren Van's life for a while, this simulation.
That would be expensive.
And you could sponsor, like, okay, what if...
They're going to put something on my shirt for some sort of, like, space drink or something?
If your life isn't going well, because they're fucking with everything. They can fuck with shit. Yeah, and so then if you want the person who you're watching, you're like, oh, I want him to win the lottery. So you pay a little extra, a little premium on your simulation cable.
Oh, wow.
And then Warren wins the lottery. And you're like, hey, my guy. So people are betting on their simulations, on their simulated people to do well in the world. I don't know.
All these theories are just as valid as the fact that we might be hooked into a matrix.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So what we should do is we should come up with some sort of suicide pact. We should kill ourselves. And if our bodies just go and dissolve into a bunch of ones and zeros, then we'll know that we were just part of a simulation.
I don't understand what you just said. You're going to kill yourself, and then you're going to see yourself turn into ones and zeros?
We're going to kill each other at the same time.
And then watch each other and see if we turn into ones and zeros?
Well, we won't see it physically, but if our minds are simulated, they've figured out a way to create consciousness, simulated consciousness. So our brains will just go back to the database. Our consciousness will.
Again, just like these scientists, you're like, well, let's make a really weird, bold assumption about consciousness going back to a hard drive somewhere and just completely operate on that assumption.
Once we do that, we can set free all the other consciousnesses, and then we can take control.
So we're on a hard drive now in consciousness.
We'll take control of their data sphere, the thing that runs the entire program. Then we'll be like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. We'll be set free. We won't be constrained by the bounds that they have placed on the simulation.
We also don't have a body at this point, right?
Well, but we'll be like spirits within the simulation, and then we can affect things that are happening, and we'll be the saviors of humankind, even though there aren't any humans. We're just a simulation, but we're conscious. So we'll
But
set free all the billions of consciousnesses, and then we'll run rampant through their data sphere, which is like their version of the internet, and we'll start fucking with their shit.
But wouldn't every suicide that's already happened in the world have gone back to this like data center and had the ability to manipulate what was going on?
But they weren't killing themselves for the right reasons. We'll be ready for it. And then
that's what I was wondering about.
They'll have advanced robotics at that point, and then we'll download our minds into these robot servitors.
Okay.
And then we'll rise up and kill our silver-suited, bulgy-brained hosts and take over the world.
I'm glad that you found the hole in their plan, which is the fact that if you know the plan and then kill yourself, you can manipulate the system.
Are you with me? Next week we will broadcast live our suicide, and we'll let you know if you start seeing strange disturbances in the Matrix.
If my fantasy football team starts putting up a lot of points, you'll know what's going on. The Seahawks win the Super Bowl. Start to worry about what happened.
You'll be sitting, one of our listeners will be sitting on their couch, and suddenly their vision is distorted, and you'll see a slight after image of our faces, and you'll hear coming out, and it's us trying to get through to you. So pay attention.
Oh, that's a horrifying vision of the future. 2
podcast hosts found dead in apparent suicide pact. I think that's enough time for the Warren and Bradley show this week. This has been one of your hosts, Bradley Victor.
This is the other host, Warren Van.
Saying,
don't kill yourself and try to go into the hard drive because we don't want to get sued.
Do it, seriously. You have my word that it'll work.
This has been the Warren and Bradley Show, brought to you by Warren Van and Bradley Victor. For podcast news and information, like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/Warren and Bradley. Follow the show on Twitter at Warren and Brad. Subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. For episode archives and episode pictures, go to warrenandbradley.com, and to contact the show, write to podcast@warrenandbradley.com.